Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech, protected.
I'm your host, Chris Roberts, and today I figured we'd go and get a little edgy, talk about some of the issues that might offend some people, or issues, that people don't want to sit down and talk about. For example, transgender people in sports. I have not seen, this probably is, but I have not seen women transitioning to men and competing in men's sports. Why? Because they would not have much of a chance if they were going to compete in the men's division. I have seen over and over again where males have identified as females, and then they go compete in female sports. When they compete in female sports, like the guy Thomas, or the woman Thomas at University of Pennsylvania, swimmer, wins a national championship. Two male-born individuals who identified as women won some state championships in Connecticut. The Franklin Pierce had a hurdler that identifies as a woman who won the NCAA. Now we have a lot of states coming in saying, well, we're going to put legal bans against people who identified something different from their birth. And there are students and people, but it's mostly students, especially in the schools, who may identify as a different gender from their assigned gender at birth, and they're just average athletes competing in sports. In a lot of cases, you will see, if you go to the rec league or one of those, little league, you have girls competing in the men's division, boys division. And yes, they knock out a boy who just wasn't good enough, which is, I have no problem with that, is because that's one, if only 15 kids can make the Little League team, the 15 best kids make the Little League team irregardless of their assigned birth. But when you go to the other side, then you have some serious problems. You have the high school in Vermont who decided to forfeit the game because they did not want to play against a transgender male to female on the other team. And they have been severely punished for that. In Massachusetts, in the volleyball, because of the speed and the power that a male has over the females, a couple of girls got hurt on the team, and the team forfeited their match. And now the state of Massachusetts wants to punish them. And how I would tend to look at it, my daughters that asked me, all my daughters that played sports and stuff, my grandsons have played sports, my granddaughters have played sports. In 1981, I ran the Boston Marathon. I finished 2 hours and 30 minutes. I finished in 317th place. Okay. Only 4 women were ahead of me. Joan Benoit, Shay, the one from Australia or New Zealand. But all 4 of those women were world-class athletes, Olympic athletes. So I, as a male, if I had decided that I was going to identify as a female, I would have finished, I think Shay was a couple of places behind me. I would have finished in 5th place against all the women. Okay. Is that fair to all the other women that were working their butts off and everything? You know, my muscles that were developed, my height was developed, and I had stride advantage over the women. The other part, yes, I would have lost some muscle mass if I took female hormones, but I would have also gained, my fat percentage would have gone up, and my fat percentage would all soon become an advantage in the marathon. So it's a tough decision. I think there was just a soccer team in Australia that had 5 women were self-identifying women on the team, resulting in injuries. I think it was in Great Britain. They have a rugby league, and 4 or 5 of the teams have decided they're not going to play anymore against transgender females, male to females, because it put a lot of the females at risk. And yet, again, if I decided I was going to identify as a woman and I was playing soccer, as far as sprint wise and stuff, I'm faster than mostly all the women. When I was high school, I run the 100 yards under 11 minutes. I think my best time was 10.8. My endurance and my speed would be better than the top, all the top women. And so, well, if I played rugby, you know, if you're a 5'10", 165-pound woman, hey, you're pretty big, pretty tall, but that's far above the average height for women. But if I'm playing as a rugby player and I'm 6'1" and I'm 185, 190 pounds, the force and the impact is I'm not going to be receiving much of the force impact. The woman that was a woman, because she was identified as the female gender at birth, would have some difficulties with me. Males who are identifying as females are winning a lot of bike races, things like that. And it's tough. You want to give everybody the opportunity to compete and do stuff, but do you give the people the opportunity if it takes away opportunities for other people? That's a tough one. And then, okay, if you go in, this is why you get in trouble. For example, the males that males in high school that ran in Connecticut and won. What are they doing now? Are they still transgender? Or were they transgender for a period of time? Were they transgender prior? And then they just continue right on through? Or was that transgender period a short period of time? Okay, for example, Bruce Jenner, who then became Caitlyn Jenner, and has not, Caitlyn Jenner has been a female the whole way since the transition started. But then again, for example, if you look at Bruce Jenner, who won a gold medal in the Montreal Olympics for decathlon, which made him like the .001 best athlete, top athlete in the country, in the world. If he transitioned over to a woman, how would any woman be able to fairly compete against Caitlyn Jenner? It's my personal belief is that if you were a male and you transition over, you really have an unfair advantage over the female athletes. But I have a different opinion. Okay, there was a tennis player named Richardson who went through the complete surgical and hormone treatment. and basically started off as a man and transitioned over to a female. She wasn't a top-notch pro player, but she was up there. And you had people like Christy Everett and other ones saying, hey, I don't want to compete against this person because this person is extremely hard. This person has advantages that I don't have. So, but for someone to go, okay, I've taken I decided that I am going to change my gender, and I take hormones to lower my testosterone. To me, that's a big difference. Because Richards, when she made the transition, there was no going back. It's going to be a tough one. The different international bodies have come out in certain rules. You got to able to compete in certain sports. You could not ever reach male puberty. You would have to have puberty blockers before you made male puberty. That's a whole nother can of worms. Do you, 7, 8, 9 years old, start giving your son, puberty blockers? So he would never reach puberty, and then his gender would be changed. His birth gender would be changed, and then that individual can live her whole life as a her. To me, that's a tough one. Does a parent really have the right to determine what sex or what gender their child is going to have to spend the rest of their life? So leading up to the Paris Olympics this summer, they're having some problems, but most of them are going to follow the international rules. But 2028, that's going to be a crisis year, because 2028, it'll be in California. And California, being much more liberal on social issues, have different laws that ensure that people who have changed their gender from their gender that was assigned at birth are protected. And so I can see it can go on and on. Some people have already filed lawsuits saying that they have a right and the international committee does not have a right to set the standards. And if they do have the right to set the standards, the U.S. Olympic Committee does not have the right to follow those international organization standards, because we have different rights in the United States. So that's a really good question. What is it going to be? And one of the things it's going to be, We're talking about a group that makes up less than 1% of the population. And when you talk about athletes, they're probably making up about 0.1%, if even that high. So it's going to be tough. And always the final decision on this is follow the money. Because corporations will say, hey, what can I do that's not going to cost me money? And as Bud Light has learned, and some of the other companies are learning, it's costing them money. And so it's tough. And the other part, it's just going to be tough. And mostly every critical decision in the United States comes down to money. When I was in the State House, there was a Republican representative who decided that he was going to support the marriage equality bill up in the State House. And I go, Tony, why are you supporting this? Well, Tony and his wife were high-powered lawyers. Tony was conservative and his wife was a Kennedy liberal. And you know what Tony told me? He says, gay men are some of the most educated people in the country. And a lot of these gay men who are doctors and lawyers and engineers, they make a lot of money. They have a lot of wealth. And it doesn't matter if you're male or female, female, male, male. Sooner or later, a bunch of you are going to get divorced. And he goes, that's where I stand to make a lot of money. Handling those wealthy gay couple, lesbian couples' divorces. I go, what? He goes, yep. So he wasn't making an ethical decision. He wasn't making, this is really right, everybody has the same right decision. He was looking at it a financial, and he says, wait a minute. If two gay guys are living together for 20 years and they break up, they move on. But if those two gay guys were married for 20 years, break up, there's a lot of money to be made in handling that divorce. That's how decisions are made a lot of times in the United States. Now to another one. President Obama, Freudian slip. President Biden has got himself in a bind. Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel, he's Israel's Trump. He has a lot of legal problems, a lot of ethical problems, but he's able to work most of the religious groups in Israel to keep him as prime minister. Well, for most of the people in Gaza, all the way down at the end of Gaza, very little food, very little water, very little medicine, and all that kind of stuff. And the United States got with them, basically says, okay, we're going to provide emergency relief to those, I think it's over 1 million people. Well, yesterday, an Israeli aircraft, yesterday or the day before yesterday, put a missile right through the hood, the roof of the car, killing 7 of the aid workers, including an American. That was helping the people, helping getting the food and supplies in. Israel said, well, you know what? We're sorry. It was a mistake. We misidentified. No different than the aid workers and the people that helped the United States back in Kabul, the day that they had the embarrassing withdrawal where 13 American soldiers were killed, which I doubt the president or anybody up in his organization or even the Secretary of Defense even could remember the names. They were just statistics. We put a missile right through a roof of another vehicle, killing 10 people, including children. Oh, it was a mistake. No one was held accountable. And so we just forget about it. But at the same time, the Israelis were doing some attacks in Syria. Okay, you got the Iranian embassy consul in Syria, and a missile went in, and people are going back and forth. Was it in the compound or was it in the building that the missile struck, killed an Iranian general and a number of other people. But here comes the problem there. An embassy in another country is sovereign soil. So part of the thing that we go in is we do not go attacking other countries' embassies. But you can say, well, you had a spy in there, or you had a general in there. But that opens a can of worms if we start attacking other countries' embassies. For example, the United States doesn't have an embassy in Iran. Okay? Because Iran attacked the United States Embassy in 1979 and had the hostages, I think, for 444 days. So what happens is if we want to do something on a diplomatic level, Switzerland acts in our place as a third party in between. So we have this problem. Innocent people are killed. And so people say the reason they were killed because they were helping out. Netanyahu did not want to get any supplies of food to this group, and he was under outside pressure to get the food. Now that, like I said earlier, now that the 7 people were killed, bingo, food supplies, emergency relief is basically going to stop for a while. And so it's going back and forth. Okay, on to another one when I was talking about the deficit and the debt. And so, for example, President Biden says the deficit will be $1.7 trillion next year. Okay? 1.7 trillion. You can say, hey, really no big deal. Is it? Okay, there is only so much money in the world. So if we have $100 trillion in the world, and to round it off, the federal government says, oh yeah, we have $2 trillion deficit. And we want some people in America, and we want the rest of the world to come up with $2 trillion because we're going to print $2 trillion in bonds, and we want you to put that $2 trillion in American bonds. Okay? Here's some that are going to be 10 years, there's 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, even 50 years. But so we would like you to buy 10-year bonds, $2 trillion worth of 10-year bonds, and we'll pay you 4% for the next 10 years. Okay. That sounds like really simple. So this is what's going to have to happen. The United States and these other countries are going to have to, there are two options or combination. They're going to have to print $2 trillion worth of money to buy these $2 trillion worth of bonds. And if they do that, they're saying is, you know, this $2 trillion that of bonds that you bought, you can't touch for the next 10 years. Or the other side is, you know what? We only have $100 trillion in the world, and we got to come up with $2 trillion. So what we're going to do is we're going to take $2 trillion out of the economy to buy the United States government bonds. So each year, $1.5 trillion saved each year. You're going to have to create money or take it out of the economy or combination. Bring it down to our level. Okay. I'm adding $1,000 every year onto my credit card balance. The interest rate on my credit card balance is going higher and higher. So most of the thing I'm doing is I'm paying interest. So if I'm using, I get average credit, I get maybe a 750, so I only have to pay 29.9%, say for a Kohl's card or a MasterCard. So after year one, I still have I have $1,000 in debt, but I paid $300 in interest. After year two, and I'm simplifying it, I have $2,000 in debt, but I paid 6% in $600 interest. $3,900 in interest. $4,000, but $1,200 in interest. So by year 4, I'm used to adding $1,000, but now I have to pay $1,200. Where does that extra $200 comes from? I go, how am I going to pay that $200? I got to find a way to pay that $200. So, okay, I'm not going to go out and eat a couple of times over the course of the next year so I can save $200. So my interest rate isn't higher than my deficit, the yearly deficit. So that's $200. So I decide I'm not going to go to Fritz, or I'm not going to buy a couple of Athens. So that's $200. But I just took money away from Fritz Fries and Athens. The 5th year, now it's $5,000 in debt, but I got to pay $1,500. So next year, I have to cut $500 of my spending. So not only I'm not going to Fritz, I'm not going to Athens, I'm not going to go to Kohl's because I can't really afford to buy a couple of clothes. I'm going to go to Hannaford's. Yes, I like that 93% lean hamburger. But, I got to save money, so I'm going to go down to 80% lean. And I'm going to go to the dollar store to buy some of my detergent and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to pay $1.25 for a birthday card instead of paying $6 for it in Walmart. So that's what happens. As the interest rate goes up, to keep it under control, I have to, on my level, I have to reduce my spending at a greater amount every year. And if I don't, I have to go bankrupt. I don't have the ability to produce money, to write money. But I have the ability to get a second job. If I get the second job, I can first thing I can do is reduce my interest payments. And if I continue on my job and I continue to spend less like I was before I got that job, I can get myself out of trouble. But it has a negative effect because the banks who own the credit cards were making an awful lot of money off me. So if they're not making money off me, that's less they make for profit. So that's why, for example, the Federal Reserve said the Americans' credit card debt is the highest it's ever been. And so Americans are living, covering their other expenses on credit card because they have to compete with the federal government. You go, well, that's the federal government. That doesn't affect me much. Yes, it does. When the president signed that budget deal back in December, that deal, except for the Department of Defense, limited discretionary spending to 1% a year. 1%. Okay. Dan Mitchell was on the radio this morning, and he's talking about, look at all the things that we get that we don't have to pay for. It's someone else's money. Okay, for example, we do a runway project at the airport. It changes now and then, but one of the things it says, okay, you come up with 2.5%. The state of New Hampshire comes up 2.5%, and the FAA will come up with 95% to do that. Pretty good deal. Or we got to repair a bridge, it's on the way. The federal government says, hey, Keene in the state of New Hampshire, you come up with 20%, we'll pay for 80%. Okay? And you go, good. Well, where does that money come from? One is FAA. For people, every time you get on a plane, you pay a service charge that goes into that kitty. Some airports charge you a facilities fee that stays at their airport. But most of that money comes from the excise tax when you buy gas or you buy aviation fuel. Okay? Well, as the federal government is demanding the cars get higher and higher miles per gallon, the excise tax income is going down. When you get EV cars, they don't pay any excise tax. Me, I got a hybrid. I can drive all around Keene and never use any gas at all. So for every gallon that I save, so basically around every 25 miles that I drive, the state of New Hampshire does not collect the gasoline excise tax, and the federal government doesn't collect it. So the federal government pool is down, the state pool is down, and then it's agreed that it would only go up by 1%, and everybody's competing for it, and the cost of doing these construction projects are going through the roof. So which means at the local level, you either don't fix it or you have to come up with more money yourself. And if you have to come up with more money yourself, your local taxes go up. Department of Education did not get all the money they wanted. And right now, Title I funds may be cut for next year or even this year going forward. Why is Title I funds so important? Title I allows us to hire teachers and paraprofessionals and stuff to help some of our most at-risk children. And Title I funds depends on the free and reduced lunch numbers. So the things that we're not paying attention to because we're up here, a lot of them are up here, or we're angry at each other. We're not looking in our own front yard. The things that we're going to need to keep our standard of living, the chances of getting that funding is dropping. Like housing, money for housing, money for fuel assistance, money for SNAP, money for electrical assistance. There is only so much. The need is growing, and it's limited to 1%. So you could have more housing. I mean, more people homeless. Because we'll go to the middle class. People are talking about the middle class. The middle class is shrinking. Okay. I was reading some reports. The American middle class is not shrinking. And the reason it's not shrinking is because the middle class is a statistical number. And what they like to do is break the population down into 5 groups by income. Okay? And then 1 to 20, 21 to 40, 41 to 60. Okay. So, if it's 21 to 79, that's the middle class. You can't, an individual can fall out of the middle class and into poverty. Okay? A person in poverty can raise up and make it to the middle class or even higher. But the middle class is a statistical number. 21 to 79 is the middle class. Okay? But what they don't tell you is, okay, in that first group, 0 to 20, about 17% of the people in the country on poverty are in that group. So basically, you're saying from 0 to 17, they're poverty. Those households are poverty, at the poverty or below the poverty level. Okay? So what happened is in the first group, while their income is at or below the poverty level, they get a lot of non-cash government benefits. Say subsidized housing, where they have to pay 30% of their income. SNAP, Medicaid, healthcare, and stuff. So basically, the household may make, say, $30,000, but they may get another $20,000 in government subsidies, earned child income credit, all that. Now, say you're in the 41 to 59 range. You don't qualify for any government subsidies. You got to pay full boat for the rent. You got to pay for health care. You got to pay for electricity. You got to pay for all your food. So in certain cases, people right in the middle, that 41 to 59, would actually have less buying power than some of the groups who, quote unquote, are officially at the poverty level. It's a sucky system, but that's the way the system is, but no one wants to tell you about it. And what I said a couple of years ago, we're looking at, oh yeah, the top 1%, they're not paying enough taxes. Yes, the top 1% should be paying more into Social Security, more into Medicare. To say, well, you know what? Once you make $150,000, you don't have to pay anymore. Or you can talk about the billionaires, Jeff Bezos, Musk. You can't forget the guy from Microsoft. But again, those people don't get paid billions of dollars. Those people they may get, say, $10 million. So they pay their taxes on $10 million. So just pay, and they say, okay, 38%. Okay, that's the high. I pay 38%. So I pay $380,000 on my, $3,800,000 on my $10 million. But I go to all these stocks, and these stocks are not wages. I can sell those stocks for money, but I pay a capital gains rate on those stocks. So I buy the stocks I was given, say the stocks, so I buy $1 million worth of stocks, and it goes up to $11 million. And I go, well, I'm going to sell $11 million. I'm going to sell $10 million of these shares. Okay? I can pay the capital gains. I think the capital gains now is down around 20. So I have income from selling my stocks, $10 million, paying at 20%. So I only have to pay $2 million on that $10 million I sold. But the $10 million I got in wages, I have to pay $3.8 million. So when you go in and say, wait a minute, their percentage of their income, of their income is lower than my secretary. Well, you know what? Businesses have bought off Congress, and that's why you have a capital gains tax that's lower than a lot of people's regular taxes. And most of the money in the United States is tied up in the stock market. And not many people in the United States own stock shares and stuff. And when it comes down to it, it is not income. It is wealth. If I live in San Francisco and I make $300,000 a year working for Google, but I'm paying $4,000 a month for an apartment, I'm doing it, bang, bang, bang. So when I put everything together, it's $300,000 in, $300,000 out. My wealth is zero. So you go, where's all your money going? It's no different than a lot of these NFL players who end up broke. Oh, I'm going to get $10 million this year, so I'm going to buy this big house. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it's like, I'm going to have flashy parties, flashy cars. It's like, oh, 10 million in, 10 million out. I made $150 million over my career and I don't have anything. I'm an Andre Peterson. Where's all my money went? Okay, that is income, your wages. Okay, that is not wealth. So if I live in itty bitty Keene and I get $80,000 a year and I spend $60,000 a year and I'm paying off my house, that would mean at $60,000 a year, saving $20,000, I have $20,000 in wealth, while the guy out in San Francisco getting $300,000 has no wealth, and he's living in an apartment. And every month that I pay off my mortgage, my wealth increases. And so the politicians are talking about income, where income doesn't really matter. It's important, but it's wealth. And over the last 20 years, the top 20% of the people have increased their wealth dramatically, where people in the bottom 40%, they have hardly no wealth at all. Whatever income they have is going in and out just to make up, just to cover their daily cost of living, and most of them then still have to use the credit card to make good, and they go to bed every night praying nothing will happen, because like the Federal Reserve says, most people in the United States are screwed if they have a $400 emergency. So we need to start talking about the real things, not this thing up here. And we have to understand is politicians and businesses and media lie. They do what they need to do to increase their wealth, and it's usually at our cost. So that's it for today.